The wind carried the smell of dust and whiskey that evening. The last light of the sun bled across the barren clearing, turning the world copper red. A shovel scraped earth. Dry leaves trembled under the weight of a man's boots. She lay there, half buried already, her face streaked with dirt, eyes barely open, breath weak as a candle in the wind. The man above her grinned through broken teeth. Her stepfather, drunk again. His voice cracked the silence. "Teach you to talk back," he muttered, shoving another layer of leaves over her. "Bury the shame right out of you." She coughed once. A choked whisper slipped out. Don't let him bury me alive." No one heard, or so she thought. Down the trail, the soft clop of hooves. A lone rider, the rancher, lantern swinging from his saddle, his eyes scanning the land the way a man does when he's seen too much wrong in this world. He saw the man with the shovel first, saw the heap beneath the leaves second, and something inside him went cold. The stepfather froze when the lantern light hit him. For half a heartbeat, no one moved. Then the outlaw spat on the ground, threw the shovel aside, and slunk into the shadows like a coyote chased off from a kill. The rancher swung down from his horse, boots hitting the ground hard. His breath smoked in the cooling air. He shoved the leaves aside with rough, desperate hands. Her face emerged, eyes fluttering, skin pale. "Easy now," he muttered, voice low, steady as winter wind. "I got you. You're safe." She wasn't. Not yet. He lifted her into his arms. She weighed nothing, just bones and fear. Somewhere in the distance, the stepfather's laugh drifted through the trees, high, sharp, promising he'd be back. The rancher didn't look that way. He looked only at the girl, felt the faint beat of her heart against his chest, and he rode hard for the ranch, lantern swinging wild as the night closed in behind them. Because tonight, death had come close. Too close. The rancher's horse tore through the darkness like a streak of thunder across dry earth. Each pounding hoofbeat rattled through his bones as he gripped the girl tight against his chest. Her breath fluttered, shallow, uneven, like a bird caught in winter's grip. The moonlight painted the trail silver, but he saw only her face, dirt-streaked, lips cracked, eyes half shut, life slipping away one heartbeat at a time. "Stay with me," he muttered under his breath, low and steady, as if the words themselves could keep her alive. Behind them, somewhere in the black stretch of trees, the stepfather's drunken laugh rose once more. A promise, a warning. Then it was gone, swallowed by wind and distance. The rancher pressed his heels harder. The horse obeyed, flying faster. Her voice cracked suddenly, barely a whisper. "Why? He'd do this?" His jaw clenched. He didn't answer. There weren't words for men like her stepfather. Some rot too deep for talk. Lantern light swung wildly with each stride, throwing shadows like ghosts against the canyon walls. The girl trembled in his arms. "You're not dying tonight," he said finally, his voice rough, certain. "Not on my watch." She coughed weakly, head against his shoulder. "Cold?" He pulled his coat tighter around her, shielding her from the wind that cut like knives through the open land. Miles fell behind them. At last, the dark outline of the ranch rose on the horizon. Fencing, the barn roof, the faint promise of firelight through cabin windows. Almost there. Just hold on. The rancher rode straight through the gate, leapt off before the horse even stopped. He kicked the door open with his boot, the hinges groaning in protest. Inside, the warmth of the hearth spilled across the floor, chasing back the cold night. He laid her on the bed near the fire. Her pulse was a thread, faint but there. He wrapped her in every blanket he owned, his big hands working gentle now, almost shaking. She was alive, barely, but alive. And as the wind howled outside, he knew the night wasn't done with them yet. The storm outside clawed at the windows, rattling the shutters like some angry spirit, but inside the cabin the fire burned steady, throwing long shadows up the log walls. She lay beneath a mountain of blankets on the old bed, skin pale against the flicker of the flames. Every so often her chest rose in a shallow breath as though the simple act of living cost her more than she had to give. The rancher crouched beside her, dipping a cloth into the basin, wiping the dirt and dried blood from her face. His voice stayed low, steady. "You're safe here. No one's touching you again." Her eyes opened a sliver, glassy with exhaustion. He won't stop," she whispered, words barely louder than the wind outside. "He drinks, and he hates. Says I owe him everything." The rancher's jaw tightened. He'd seen men like that before, hollow inside, filled up with rage and whiskey until they burned everyone near. "Not here you don't," he said. "You don't owe him a damn thing." For the first time she looked at him, really looked, like she was weighing the truth in his words. Silence filled the cabin, only the crackle of fire and the occasional groan of the timbers in the wind. Then, faint but clear, the morning birds began to call through the storm's edge, a thin, trembling note of life. She closed her eyes again, but this time it wasn't fear pulling her under. It was exhaustion, and maybe a sliver of trust. The rancher stood slowly, draping another blanket over her. He turned toward the door, staring out into the black timberline where he knew the stepfather had vanished hours before. He wasn't gone, not really. Men like that circled back when the bottle ran dry and the anger came roaring again. The rancher reached for his rifle, leaning by the door. He checked the chamber, slow and methodical, before setting it back down beside the chair where he'd keep watch till daylight. Tonight she could sleep. But he knew the storm wasn't done with them, not by a long shot. The sun had barely slipped behind the hills when the dogs started barking, low at first, then wild, frantic. The rancher was on the porch before the last echo of their howl faded. He stood still, watching the timberline where dusk bled into night. There. A figure moved between the trees, staggering, angry, carrying the smell of whiskey and hate even before the wind pushed it close. The stepfather. He stopped just inside the fence line, shoulders hunched, bottle swinging in one hand. His voice cracked the night like a whip. "Bring her out," he shouted. "She's mine. Always will be." The rancher didn't move. His hand rested on the post beside him, calm as stone. "Not tonight," he said. "Not ever again." The man laughed, bitter and sharp. "You think you can keep her from me, old fool like you?" The girl was inside, clutching the blanket tighter, heart pounding loud enough she swore he could hear it through the walls. The rancher took one slow step off the porch, boots in the dust. The last red light caught the hard lines of his face. "She stays," he said. "You leave." For a heartbeat neither moved. Wind pushed through the cottonwoods, making them creak like old bones. The stepfather's smile slipped. His eyes turned mean. "You think this ends here? I'll be back. And I won't be alone." He stumbled backward, still grinning that empty grin, retreating into the dark with words that clung to the night air like smoke. "You hear me, old man? Next time I'll burn this place to the ground." Then he was gone, swallowed by the trees, leaving only the stink of liquor and threat behind. The rancher stood there a long while, watching the black timberline until the last echo of footsteps faded. Inside, the girl stared at him, and he came through the door. Her eyes searched his face. "Will he come back?" The rancher set his hat on the table. His voice stayed low, steady. "Yeah," he said, "he will." And he started checking the rifle by the door again. Morning crept over the horizon in thin silver streaks, turning the ranch in pale gold. The air smelled of dust, hay, and wet earth from last night's storm. The girl sat on the porch steps, hands clutching her knees, staring out across the fields. The wind whispered through the cottonwoods, carrying faint echoes of the stepfather's threats. The sound of hooves broke her focus. Not frantic this time, steady, commanding. The sheriff rode up, coat dusted in trail dirt, badge catching the morning light. His horse snorted, pawing the ground as if sensing the tension. The rancher stepped forward, hand on the porch railing. "Morning, Sheriff," he said, voice rough but controlled. The girl swallowed hard. He's coming back, isn't he? Her words trembled. The sheriff dismounted slowly, boots crunching on gravel. He looked at her, then at the rancher. Men like him don't stop, he said, but the law can make sure they pay for what they've done. She nodded, biting her lip. Can you stop him? The sheriff's eyes narrowed. We'll try, but we'll need details, names, dates, what he's done. She told her story, voice quivering. The beatings, the debts, the near death in the clearing. The rancher stood silently, fists clenched at his side, letting her speak, letting her grief flow. The sheriff listened, taking notes with the care of a man who's seen too much evil to rush judgment. We'll make a report, he said. A warrant. He won't get away this time, not if we do it right. The rancher rested a hand on her shoulder. You're not alone in this, he said softly. The girl looked up at him, sunlight catching in her hair, hope flickering like the first embers of a fire. For the first time since the night in the clearing, she believed she might live to see a future beyond fear. The sheriff swung on to his horse, signaling the deputies behind him. Stay alert, he called. Men like that circle back, always. The rancher nodded, watching the sheriff ride out across the fields, the girl beside him. The wind tugged at her hair, carrying the promise of justice across the open land. The girl exhaled slowly, letting it out like water from a deep well. The rancher tightened his grip on the rifle by the door. Tonight they might sleep, but he knew the night wasn't done yet. The night arrived like a predator, silent and suffocating. The ranch lay in shadow, the fire inside the cabin throwing long, trembling shapes across the floorboards. Outside, the wind carried whispers, rustling the trees, teasing the edges of fear. Then came the torches, flickering points of orange in the darkness. Figures moving through the brush, laughing, shouting, their boots crunching over gravel and dry grass. The stepfather had returned, and he hadn't come alone. 2 men followed him, snarling, eyes glinting in the torchlight. The rancher stepped onto the porch, rifle in hand, boots planted firmly. He felt the weight of every second, the pulse of his horse steady beneath him, the life of the girl in his care pressing against his chest like a fragile flame. She's safe, he said, voice cutting the night. Back off. The stepfather sneered. Safe? You think your walls and your guns can keep me away? His words were sharp, soaked in liquor and malice. I'll take what's mine. The girl crouched inside, clutching the lantern, eyes wide and terrified. Her fingers dug into the wooden beam of the loft as the men kicked the gate open. A loud clang echoed across the yard. Horses stampeded in panic. The rancher fired a warning shot. Dust and sparks flew where the bullet struck, and the men faltered, swearing and shouting in rage. One swung a club, the other a broken bottle, but the rancher's stance was Unyi. Elding, steady as the earth itself. Get out, he growled. This ends tonight. They lunged anyway, shadows twisted in the torchlight, fists met flesh, wood splintered under blows. The girl ducked low, heart hammering as the fight raged beneath her. The night rang with shouts, gun clicks, the metallic scent of blood rising in the air. Through the chaos, the rancher moved with precision, protecting the girl, striking only when necessary, his eyes always on her safety first. The stepfather roared, but the fear in his men was growing. Then, distant but clear, came the crack of another rifle. The sheriff. The men froze, torches trembling in their hands. The stepfather's eyes widened, rage and panic mixing as the sound of approaching hooves shook the ground. The rancher didn't wait. He grabbed the girl, dragging her to the cabin, covering her with his body as the sheriff's deputies closed in. The wind carried the first notes of dawn, brushing away shadows, promising the night's terror might finally end.